On Christmas Eve, she thought his car was her Uber. When Lily Whitmore got into the incorrect car at 11:47 p.m., the Mafia boss closed the doors and shouted, "You're not leaving, Bambi." On Christmas Eve, sporting heels that had already given her 2 blisters and 1 broken strap, along with a dress she had purchased on bargain. The windows above her head would be shattered by gunfire in precisely 3 minutes. She would be standing in the snow outside a Gothic mansion that was decked out in Christmas lights in precisely 1 hour, unsure of how she got there or how to get out. However, she was unaware of any of it at the time. She was now watching her phone die while standing on a cold sidewalk in Brooklyn. She thought, "Gah, I hate Christmas," and tightened her tiny coat. Nothing like the holidays to remind you exactly how alone you were. It had nothing to do with the forced cheer, carols, or decorations. She was reminded of how invisible she was by the way the entire world seemed to pair off, leaving her to stand by herself on sidewalks like this one. It was just another Christmas Eve that confirmed what she already suspected. Certain people were designed to be forgotten, while others were made to be found. Sophia's Christmas party had been just what she had anticipated. Cheap champagne, loud music, and the certain loneliness that results from being surrounded by people who smile without looking at you. As soon as no one was watching, she had snuck out. The cold struck her like a blow to the body. If you had family, December in New York was lovely, but Lily didn't have any. She observed the blinking of her phone from 8% to 0. The screen turned dark. She felt a wave of relief as a black SUV with darkly tinted windows came up. She failed to look at the license plate. She just wanted to get home since her fingers were numb. She plunged herself in after yanking open the back door. "Oh, thank gosh," she exhaled as she sank farther into the leather. A voice sliced through her ranting like a sword, saying, "Bro, 4th Street, please. I'm the one who called. My phone died, but the order went through. Can you turn up the heat? I can't feel my fingers." "Who are you?" Lily opened her eyes. Everything inside her froze, and the man in the front seat had turned. With a stone-carved face, a pointed jaw, dark hair, and a look that suggested her existence was an annoyance he was figuring out how to get rid of. Her ice-blue eyes held her in place. Under that fixed gaze, she stammered as she attempted to find her voice. "It was me who made the Uber call. I'm supposed to go to Brooklyn with you." He gazed at her. His visage stiffened as his gaze shifted to the rearview mirror. Her head banged into the headrest as the SUV lurched forward so violently. "Hello?" With a surge of outrage, she took the seat. "What are you doing? I'll report you." Another sleek, black automobile came up next to it. The window rolled down. A firearm. She let forth a sound that was hardly human. "Oh my God, is that right?" Her face was thrust toward the ground as a hand surged back, grabbing her hair. "Down." Just one word, not a request. The rear window was broken by the first bullet. Glass flew down as Lily screamed and buried her face in the carpet. Additional shots. Crack, 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 and she could hear him talking quickly in Italian, perfectly composed, as though being shot at was nothing out of the ordinary. "Let me out," she cried hysterically. "Stop the car." The single word that came back was flat. Final. No. The chase continued. Sharp turns, bullets pinging off metal. When it finally stopped, she stayed face down, trembling. Up. A hand gripped her arm and pulled her upright. Through the cracked window, a Gothic mansion draped in Christmas lights. He was already out, moving to her door. When he opened it, his expression was stone. Lily pressed back against the seat, her voice shaking. "I'm not going anywhere with you." His hand closed around her elbow, unbreakable, and he pulled her out, dragging her toward the house. "Let go." She tried to yank free. "I said, let go." His voice was flat, cold, eyes fixed ahead as he walked. "Wrong car. Those men saw your face. Now you're coming with me. I'm not. You walk out that gate. They grab you in 2 minutes." His jaw tightened. "They think you're my woman. They'll use you or kill you." Her blood ran cold, but she kept fighting his grip. "Tell them I'm not. Won't matter." Still walking. They saw. "That's enough. You can't. Stop talking." The words cut like a knife. "I have things to handle." The front door burst open. A small, round woman rushed out in a red apron, white hair flying. "Nico THS acceso." The old woman spotted Lily and stopped dead. Worry vanished, replaced by pure joy. A girlfriend. Her hands flew to her cheeks, eyes going wet. "Nico, you brought a girlfriend on Christmas Eve." Before Lily could react, the woman pulled her into a crushing hug. "No, I'm not." Lily tried to pull back, words muffled against the woman's shoulder. The old woman released her just enough to cup her face, examining her like a prize. "She's beautiful," she breathed. "Look at these eyes, Nico. Where have you been keeping her hidden?" Lily's tone cracked with desperation. "I'm not his girlfriend. I entered the incorrect vehicle." The woman, however, was not paying attention. Her smile was impossible to contain as she gave Lily a cheek pinch that was painful, so humble. "And my grandchildren will be a beautiful figure." Lily's voice became octave higher. "Grandkids?" I mistook him for my Uber. The elderly woman leaned in conspiratorially, making her voice audible to all. "She is timid. Toro, don't worry. The men of Santoro are fierce. I'm not bashful." Lily's voice became high-pitched. "I was taken hostage." The woman stopped, blinked, and glanced at Nico, who was standing at the doorway with no expression on her face. Her hands clasped together as a gentle smile appeared on her aged face. "Romantic." Lily's mouth fell open. "What? How romantic is kidnapping?" With an unexpectedly firm grip, the woman was already guiding her inside. "I was abducted by your father, you know. Aggressively courted, that is. I had another engagement." She let out a triple sigh. He was indifferent, extremely fervent. The men of Santoro. This was her opportunity. When Lily saw that the door was still open, she ran. Before a wall of muscle appeared, she had taken 3 steps. Her route was stopped by a huge man with a face like carved granite and hands like dinner plates. She made an attempt to dodge him. He just moved, as immobile as concrete. She pushed at his chest and said, "Let me go." Nico said in a flat, bored voice from behind, "Nothing." The giant seized her arm, not roughly, but inevitably, and led her back through the entrance, saying, "Marco, inside." The elderly woman gave her a comforting pat on the hand. "That kind of spirit. I already adore her. Nico's mother is myself, Rosa Toruro. She smiled. Do you feel hungry? You're too skinny. Before you give me grandchildren, we must feed you. Lily turned to Nico, who was going up the stairs in desperation. Will you say anything? On the third step, he stopped and turned to give her a quick glance. There was nothing in those icy blue eyes. Mom will take care of you. He spoke in a stone-flat voice. Lily's voice broke with shock as she said, Stay inside. Don't try to leave. She thinks I'm your girlfriend. He hesitated once more. Slowly, those eyes moved from her damaged heels to her face, which was smeared with tears. Bambi hit like a verdict. Her panic was broken by confusion. What? Large hazel eyes, terrified, defenseless, like a deer in the wrong forest. His voice was clinical and dispassionate. Anger found its foundation as something ignited in her chest. I practice law. The words fell like stones as he interrupted her without raising his voice. You're in the wrong planet because you got into the incorrect car. Bambi, try not to perish in it. Will you not inform her that I am not your girlfriend? She hated herself for asking such a desperate question. Like a door slamming, the single syllable fell. No. Her voice rose and cracked. Why not? There was a flash in his eyes, near amusement, but not quite. He hardly moved his lips. This is more entertaining. Then he vanished, engulfed by darkness. Rosa gave her arm a little tug. Don't let his sadness bother you. His emotional intelligence is lacking. She lowered her voice to a whisper of conspiracy. He seems to like you, though. Lily let a sound slip out, half sob, half laugh. He enjoys watching me struggle. Rosa's eyes sparkled, and her face glowed like the Christmas lights outside. That's right. Nothing ever amuses him. She gave Lily a surprisingly powerful squeeze on the arm. This is advancement. Lily parted her lips, then shut them. There were no words. Rosa's calloused, warm fingertips tapped her cheek. Come, eat first, she said, pausing as her eyes glistened. The words hit like ice water. Then we talk about the wedding. Unfazed, Rosa was already guiding her toward the kitchen while singing what sounded like a wedding march, saying, There's no wedding, not quite yet. The tears didn't start right away. Lily was crying into a handkerchief while Rosa patted her back after they had a disagreement about someone named Salvatore Jr. I just wanted to go home, she said in a weak and unvarnished whisper. Rosa's frenzied energy subsided like a dying light. I just wanted to watch Netflix and pretend tomorrow wasn't another Christmas alone. By yourself? I have no parents, no family, foster care, or anyone else. Her throat was scratched by a sour laugh. The one occasion when I have a family. The reason for this is that criminals wish to murder me. Rosa encircled her with her arms. This time, be gentle. Toro, you now have family. You may or may not want us. Rosa's shoulder muffled Lily's speech. Adopting an abduction victim is not an option. Rosa drew back, tears streaming down her face, yet her eyes were ferocious. Observe me. You consumed my pasta. That makes you family in Italy. A knock came softly later, while she was alone in a guest room larger than her flat. It's Rosa. May I enter? Lily let out a sigh of exhaustion. Indeed, earlier, Rosa crept inside. Something gentler takes the place of energy. I am aware that I am a lot. I overreact. Something old and unpleasant moved behind her eyes as she paused. My husband passed away 14 years ago. I watched my son freeze for 14 years until all that was left was ice. Slowly, Lily shook her head. You're not looking for me. I simply got into the incorrect vehicle. Rosa extended her arm and gave her a tight squeeze. Perhaps, but my son saw you. He looked pretty good. He gave you a name for the first time in 14 years. Bambi. Lily's tone was unenthusiastic and flat. Since I am powerless, Rose's eyes suddenly grew intense as they met hers. Because you forced him to listen. Strong, attractive woman. Like ghosts, he can look right through them. But he stopped because of you. Lily was at a loss for words. She had a constricted throat. Rosa walked over to the door and stopped, her hand resting on the frame. Get some rest. It will be difficult tomorrow. With that spark back in her eyes, she looked back. But you're safe tonight. You've been fed. You're at home. Defensive? The words flowed naturally. I don't live here. Rose waited with what appeared to be optimism and a gentle yet certain grin. Not quite yet. Give it some time. Behind her, the door slowly closed. Lily sat silently, her thoughts racing. She refused to be duped by a criminal. She refused to be adopted by a crazy grandmother. She had no intention of giving it any time at all. By mid-morning, she was forced to leave the room and enter the maze of marble halls due to hunger and a pressing need to do anything. In any case, she had to scout the house and commit blind spots and weak points to memory. With deliberate, measured feet, she navigated the east wing, mentally memorizing each turn. From behind her emerged a pleasant, informal voice that was completely out of place in this nightmare. Well, well, well. You must be the abducted girl that everyone has been talking about. Lily's pulse was racing when she whirled so quickly that she almost fell and hit the wall with her back. In a doorway, a young man lounged. Warm brown eyes, disheveled dark hair, and deep dimples on his cheeks. She yelled, "Get away from me," with her hands outstretched in vain. Unperturbed, he raised both hands. Whoa, easy. I'm Enzo, the funny one. Uncle Nico is the scary one. The word uncle snagged her attention. Uncle? She yelled. He's your uncle. A 15-year age difference? Enzo grinned as he spoke. After my parents passed away, he reared me. Accordingly, Uncle Nico detests it, which is precisely why I utter it whenever I can. Lily felt a mixture of anger and terror. Thus, his true name is Nico. The man who abducted me? The frightful one? She took a swallow. What is his age? 39, Enzo answered without thinking. When he's not frowning at everyone, he appears younger. It is uncommon, although it does occur. Lily exhaled in humility. She mumbled, Well, maybe I should call him uncle too. Enzo laughed and shook his head, saying, He's 15 years older than me as well, and honestly, annoying him sounds like the only pleasure I'd get in this hellhole. Yeah, I wouldn't advise that. Why not? Enzo replied, still grinning, but with a hint of seriousness. Because when he gets angry, he doesn't do the whole dramatic yelling thing. He gets quiet. And when Nico gets quiet, that's when people start praying. Her stomach tightened at that. She tore her gaze away, scanning the corridor again. Enzo noticed instantly. Front door has 6 guards, he said casually. Back door has 4. Garden walls got cameras that trip alarms like Christmas lights. A shrug, not saying don't try. I respect the spirit, just maybe eat first. Rose's cornetti are worth surviving for. I don't want your food, she snapped, or anything from any of you. Fair enough, Bambi, she flinched. Don't call me that. Don't you dare call me that. Enzo lifted a brow, amused. That's what Uncle Nico calls you. Thought it was your actual name, is it not? Her hands curled into fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms. It's not my name. My name is Lily, and I would appreciate it if at least one person in this house used it. Okay, Lily noted. He turned to leave, but paused. Word of advice, garden wall looks climbable, but there's a 4-foot drop and frozen ground. Also, Uncle Nico is in a meeting until 2. Then he was gone, whistling something that sounded like a Christmas carol as he disappeared around the corner. And Lily stood frozen in the hallway, with her mind racing through possibilities. At exactly 2:15, Lily found herself clinging to the top of the garden wall, fingers numb from cold and breath spilling in sharp white puffs. The stone was slick with frost, and the borrowed heels were useless for climbing. But sheer desperation had pushed her this far. Freedom was so close she could taste it. She swung her leg over the edge, eyeing the frozen ground below, calculating her landing. But her foot slid on a thin sheet of ice. The world tipped sideways. Her palms scraped violently against stone as she clawed for something, anything to hold on to. It didn't matter. Gravity won. She hit the ground hard on her side, the impact knocking every drop of air from her lungs. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and electric, and when she tried to stand, her leg buckled beneath her in a gasp of agony. A voice drifted down from above, cold, flat, and so calm it made her stomach drop. Finished. Lily dragged her tear-blurred gaze upward. Nico stood over her at the top of the wall, hands in his pockets, face carved from stone. No surprise, no anger, just cold inevitability, like he'd known exactly when and where she would fall. You. How? She gasped, wincing as she tried to sit up. Nico leaped down next to her and landed with predatory ease, saying, You were supposed to be in a meeting until 2 o'clock. His gaze swept over her ankle as he knelt, evaluating it as if it were an issue that needed to be resolved. His gaze then shifted to her face. Quiet and razor sharp, his voice fell. It's interesting that you are so familiar with my schedule. Her stomach churned. She didn't intend to give the impression that she was following him. All she was doing was attempting to get away. He didn't give her a chance to respond. He added, looking back at her wounded ankle, The meeting ended early. Is it possible to put weight on it? She tried to stand again and snapped. I'm fine, she cried out. I don't need your... And her ankles gave way beneath her. Nico's hand darted out with incredible reflexes, grabbing her arm and effortlessly steadying her as she would have fallen to the ground once more. He lifted her as if she were weightless before she could push him away, one arm behind her back and the other beneath her knees. She futilely shoved at his chest. His expression remained same as he said, Put me down. I can walk. I don't need you to carry me. He didn't slow down. He didn't even appear annoyed. He just slightly tightened his grip, holding her close to him, and started to make his way back to the home, as if transporting angry, injured girls was just another aspect of his daily routine. His stride did not slow, and his look remained unchanged. You are unable to walk. You are scarcely able to stand. You don't have that problem. Just give me some space. With a shattered ankle in the snow, he spoke in a bland, almost bored tone. Bambino, you're light. How much do you weigh? 90 pounds. She froze in her struggles, staring up at him in shock at the unexpected and completely inappropriate inquiry. What? Why even ask that question? 90, possibly less. He said it again without emotion. Like cradling a bird, she continued to walk without looking at her face. Her voice sounded furious as outrage momentarily overcame her dread. For your information, I am 117, and it's most likely only sprained rather than shattered. We'll wait to hear from the physician. A doctor is not necessary for me. I must return home. His gaze shifted to her feet, which were dangling pointlessly in those absurd borrowed heels. These feet? How big are they? 5? Her face flushed with something that burnt hot as she wriggled in his hold. I'm 5'4" and a size 6. This isn't even remotely your concern. His sole answer was a low sound that sounded like data being stored. Her voice raised to reverberate across the cold landscape as her wrath boiled over. Furthermore, I go by Lily rather than Bambi or Bambino. Lily. Why can't anyone in this house address me by my real name? Then he looked down at her, and for a single, tragic moment that seemed to stop time completely, those fixed eyes met hers. Bambi, I understand. The words died in her throat before they could form because of something in his eyes. He wasn't upset, and he wasn't making fun of her. He appeared to be cataloging every feature of her face and storing it somewhere significant while he simply stared at her. Then Lily's heart was acting strangely and treacherously in her chest, something she hated to look at, and Rosa was running toward them, making frantic Italian noises. Call Dr. Marchetti, he ordered to Rosa without faltering, and Lily saw the elder woman nod anxiously before they were heading up a grand staircase and down a long corridor with identical-looking doors and oil paintings. He held one hand and hoisted her, as if she were made of glass, onto the bed in a bedroom larger than her whole Bushwick apartment. Her damaged ankle screamed in protest as she instantly scurried backward against the headboard. With those unfathomable eyes, he watched her back away before vanishing through a door. He came back with a little jar filled with what appeared to be eucalyptus. Give your ankle to me. No. Despite the ache, she tucked her feet under her. Instead of arguing, he simply waited while maintaining his fixed gaze on her. Don't touch me. Extend your ankle, Bambi. She was unsure of the reason behind her compliance. She would later attribute it to fatigue, shock, and the way his voice veered into a tone that was neither quite command nor quite plea. However, she found herself following directions she didn't comprehend and stretching her leg like a toddler. He had warm hands. The first surprise was that his touch was soft, almost unbearable, as he cradled her injured ankle and applied the ointment to her flesh with slow, deliberate strokes. She had expected ice, expecting those cold gaze to translate into freezing fingers, like she saw his hands move. Like if I were something to be wary of, she wondered. Who would have thought this frozen man could be this gentle? His visage shuddered back into that impenetrable mask as he straightened and cleaned his hands after finishing. Sleep until 7 o'clock tonight. He made his way to the door. Dinner with the family. I was late last night, so we missed the Christmas meal. I'm not related to you. Behind him, the door clicked shut. With her ankle enveloped in warmth and her heart doing something very wrong, Lily gazed at the ceiling. She asked herself, what the hell just happened? At 7 o'clock, the red dress materialized on her bed, splayed like blood on snow across the white blanket. With long sleeves and a neckline that would accentuate her collarbones. It was a stunning piece of deep crimson silk. Strappy satin pumps in the same hue of red sat next to it. She shouldn't try them on at all. The shoes fit like Cinderella's glass slipper if she had been abducted by the Italian Mafia, and the dress fit as if it had been tailored to her body. 17 hone, 5'4", size 6 shoes. He had recalled every number she had yelled at him in a fit of rage and used to select the ideal one. Her heart was racing as she descended the huge staircase rather than changing back. Every step seems to be leading to something that is unavoidable. She appeared at the doorway, and the silence fell in the dining room. Heads turned to her, every conversation dying in the middle. With tears in her eyes and Rose's hands flying to her mouth, Enzo whistled in gratitude, which caused Marco across the table to give him a stern look. The only person who didn't glance away from his plate was Nico, who used precise mechanical movements to chop his food. With her hands clutched together, Rosa hurried over to her as if she were seeing a miracle. Bellissima. Look at you, tesoro. Everything is flawless, including the color and fit. Excitement mounting, she whirled toward her kid. Look, Nico. Look at how stunning she is. My son, you made such a wise decision. Lily's eyes snapped to Nico's expressionless face with a sudden realization, and heat welled up in her cheeks. Hold on. You choose this? This clothing was chosen for me by you. He didn't look up as he continued to eat. His face was completely expressionless. Your meal is becoming chilly. Bambi. With a harder tone than she meant, she pressed. That's not an answer. Did you select this dress, or did you not? With a proud smile, Rosa responded on his behalf. He was with Toro, the catalog, for an hour. 1 hour. My son measures with his eyes, compares colors, and holds up fabric swatches to the light. He never shops for anyone, not even his own mother. Mom. Nico's voice sounded gentle, yet it pierced silk like a razor. Enough. Weimu Rose's grin became playful. My Nico, you're humiliated. Feeling ashamed? I've never seen this before. I don't feel ashamed. He spoke in a controlled, bland tone. I'm consuming food. Rosa stopped talking, but her sly smile remained, and she gently nudged Lily in the direction of an empty chair. With his dimples flashing mischievously, Enzo leaned across the table. Nico's fork stopped halfway to his mouth, and his voice fell low and dangerously. Uncle Nico never buys anyone presents ever, not even for Christmas. This is genuinely historic. I should mark my calendar and alert the media. Enzo, one more word. What? I am merely observing. False innocence widened Enzo's eyes. Really? It's sweet. Uncle Nico is dressing up his little Bambi as if she were his own doll. At last, Marco spoke in a rough voice from his end of the table. The boy has a desire to die, No, he will not murder me. Enzo smiled. His favorite nephew is me. Marco said dryly, You're his only nephew. That's right, irreplaceable. Enzo simply smiled and went back to his dinner without showing any remorse, even though Nico's look could have frozen the Mediterranean in August. Lily looked at her plate and made a valiant effort to comprehend what was going on. Instead of treating her like a person with a legal degree, this man had abducted her and called her Bambi. Nevertheless, he had taken an hour to select her address, which seemed to be tailored to her. Desperate for privacy, Lily fled up the stairs as the lunch eventually came to an end. His voice abruptly halted her before she reached the landing. One commanding low word, Bambi. He was standing at the bottom of the steps, half hidden in shadow, his face unreadable as she turned slowly, her hand holding the banister so tightly it hurt. What are your desires? She didn't mean for the words to sound so cutting. Something flared in those fixed eyes, but his voice was flat as he spoke. I gave you the outfit, but you didn't thank me. I didn't request a dress. Her knuckles turned white as her fingers gripped the banister more tightly. None of this was requested by me. You're wearing it, though. He was right, and she had no answer to that. She had the option to decline. She had the option of wearing her old clothing, but she chose not to. There was a heavy, charged quiet between them. She was forced against her will to utter the scarcely audible words, Thank you for the dress, with an intensity that made her feel more vulnerable than if she had been nude. He gazed at her, then really looked, slowly moving from her heels up her silk-covered legs to her hot face, taking in every inch of her pale skin and red fabric. Something had changed in their freezing depths, some glacier breaking to disclose dark water beneath, when his eyes finally locked with hers once more. When he spoke, his voice sounded harsh and low, as if the words had been forced out of him. Bambi, you look good in red. Then he turned and vanished into the hallway's darkness, leaving her standing on the steps with her cheeks burning like she had been too close to a fire, and her heart thumping so loudly she could hear it in her ears, and the unwavering conviction that she was in far more danger than she could have ever imagined seeping into her bones, not from weapons, adversaries, or the Valente family pursuing her, but from him, his gaze, and her betraying heart's reaction. From her spot on the bed, where she'd hardly slept at all, Lily couldn't take her eyes off the red dress that hung over the chair like an accusation, catching the pale morning light in a way that made the silk sparkle like fresh blood. She heard Nico's voice speaking those words that had buried themselves in her skin and made her reluctant to go. And every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nico's face at the bottom of the steps. You look good in red, Bambi. And she felt a betraying flutter in her chest that had no place in an abduction scenario. Before something unavoidable happened, she had to leave this place. By 8 o'clock, she was dressed simply and walking through the mansion with a purpose. Rosa stood, with her back to the stove, humming an Italian lullaby as the smell of fresh coffee filled the warm kitchen. Lily's eyes instantly located what she was searching for. Beside a bowl of fruit is a tiny matching knife. With her heart pounding so loudly she was certain Rosa would hear it, she moved without thinking, closing her hand around the handle and putting it in her back pocket. Rosa continued to hum, though, and Lily slipped out as the knife was pressed up against her back. An hour later, she discovered Enzo seated on a stone bench in the yard, his face angled toward the wan winter sun. When he heard her footsteps, he opened his eyes, and that well-known smile appeared on his face. Lily. His voice was friendly and inviting, a far cry from the knot in her stomach. I finally made the decision to take a breath of fresh air. I was beginning to believe that you had become a vampire up in your room. You know, pale complexion, staying out of the sun, snarling at anyone who approaches. With her pulse roaring in her ears, Lily halted 6 feet away and reached for her back pocket. Enzo, I must speak with you. It's crucial. Her tone caused his eyebrows to rise, and the smile turned into a more wary and aware expression. That sounds serious, all right. Bambi, what's going on? You appear to be on the verge of either crying or murdering someone. Enzo's smile vanished entirely as he got up from the bench with deliberate, cautious motions that made her think of someone approaching a wild animal. She took out the knife and held it in front of her with both hands wrapped around the handle. His warm brown eyes widened with real panic as he gently raised both hands, palms out. Whoa, he exclaimed. Bambi, what the hell are you doing with that? Where did you even get a knife? I want you to take me to the gate. Her voice came out steadier than she expected, even though her hands were shaking badly enough that the blade caught the light in erratic flashes. Right now, Enzo, you're going to walk me out of here, and you're not going to try to stop me. Okay, let's just slow down for a second here. His warm brown eyes never left hers, his voice dropping into something deliberately calm and soothing. Put the knife down, and we can talk about this like rational adults. Nobody needs to get hurt today. I don't want to talk. The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. 3 days of fear and frustration finally boiling over. I've been trapped here for 3 days, Enzo. 3 days. People shot at me. Your uncle kidnapped me. And now everyone acts like I should just accept that this is my life now. He tried to interject, his voice softening with something that might have been genuine sympathy. I know this is hard, Bambi. I really do. But if you just let me explain, you don't know anything. Her grip on the knife tightened until her knuckles went white. I have a job, an apartment, a life that doesn't involve guns and criminals and dresses that cost more than my rent. Enzo took a careful step toward her, hands still raised. You're right, but I know what's waiting outside. And trust me, it's worse than anything in here. Stop calling me Bambi. Tears burned in her eyes. My name is Lily Whitmore. I'm a lawyer. Well, a junior associate who gets paid less than the office receptionist and takes orders from people half as smart as me. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through, anger fueling the words. I graduated top of my class. Top, and no one cares. No one sees it, but that tiny apartment and that pathetic paycheck and that invisible life, it's mine. My freedom, and I want it back. And I'm not spending one more day as a prisoner. Something shifted in his expression. Genuine sympathy, maybe respect. You really want to leave, knowing the Volantes will grab you the second you step outside. I'll take my chances. Anything is better than this cage. Is it? His gaze sharpened, suddenly reminding her of his uncle. You're alive. You're fed. Yeah, Uncle Nico is terrifying, but he's the only reason you're still breathing. He's the reason I'm in danger. No. Enzo's voice went hard. Lorenzo Valente is the reason. Nico is the reason you're not already dead. There's a difference. The words hit her like a blow, but she remembered the cage, however gilded. Take me to the gate, Enzo. Please, her voice cracked. Just let me go. He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Okay, I'll take you, but I need you to understand something first. What is it? Her grip on the knife loosened slightly. The moment you walk through that gate, I can't protect you. Neither can Uncle Nico. His voice was deadly serious now. And Lorenzo Valente won't just kill you. That would be too merciful. He'll use you first to hurt Nico to send a message. Ice flooded her veins, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. I understand. I'm still going. Enzo sighed, accepting defeat. Okay, your choice. He started walking toward the front of the property. Come on, I'll take you to the gate. She followed him down the winding path, past frozen fountains and dormant rose bushes and statues that watched her with blank stone eyes, her grip on the knife never loosening, even as doubt began to creep into the edges of her resolve. The front gate loomed ahead, massive iron bars topped with spikes that suddenly looked less decorative and more like a warning. Enzo stopped by the security panel and turned to face her one last time, his expression heavy with something that looked almost like grief. Last chance to change your mind, Lily. Once you're out there, you're completely on your own. I won't be able to help you. She forced the word out through a throat that had gone completely dry, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Open it, please. He typed in a code, and the gate swung open with a soft mechanical hum, revealing the frozen sidewalk and gray Manhattan Street beyond. Freedom stretched before her, or at least the illusion of it. Good luck, Lily. Enzo's voice was quiet, almost sad, weighted with genuine concern. I really mean that. Stay safe out there if you can. She didn't look back as she walked through the gate, didn't see him pull out his phone the moment she was gone, didn't hear him speak 3 urgent words into the receiver. She's out. Hurry. The street was quieter than she'd expected, residential and tree-lined with expensive brownstones and parked cars that cost more than her annual salary. Lily walked as fast as she could without breaking into a run, her eyes scanning desperately for a taxi, a bus, anything that could take her away from here. A cab appeared at the end of the block, and she stepped into the street with her arm raised, waving frantically to get the driver's attention. The driver didn't even slow down, his off-duty light glowing yellow as he passed her without a second glance. She tried again with the next one and the next one, but they all kept driving like she was invisible, like she was already a ghost haunting these expensive streets. The black van appeared out of nowhere, sliding up to the curb beside her with a predatory silence that made her blood run cold and her stomach drop like a stone. The side door was already sliding open before she could react, and 2 men were climbing out with practiced efficiency, big, dressed in dark clothes, moving with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke of experience. Nico's woman? One of them asked the other, his voice casual and almost bored, like he was confirming a grocery order instead of identifying a kidnapping target. This, the one Lorenzo wants. That's her. The second man was already reaching for her arm with thick, brutal fingers. Matches the description exactly. Brunette, Small, pretty. Let's move before someone sees us. Ice water flooded Lily's veins as terror wrapped icy fingers around her lungs and squeezed until she couldn't breathe. She tried to scream, but her throat closed up completely, tried to run, but her muscles locked in place. Please. The word came out as a pathetic whisper as rough hands grabbed her arms and started dragging her toward the van. Please, you've made a mistake. I'm not his woman. I'm nobody. I just want to go home. Shut up. One of them clamped a meaty hand over her mouth, while the other grabbed her legs, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. Boss wants you alive, but he didn't say anything about conscious. So you can come quiet or you can come unconscious. Your choice. They were lifting her toward the van's gaping darkness when the gunshot split the morning air like a crack of thunder. One of the men screamed and released her arm, clutching his shoulder where blood was already blooming through his dark jacket like a deadly flower. Lily hit the ground hard on her hands and knees, pain shooting through her palms, and through tear-blurred eyes she saw him standing in the middle of the street like an avenging angel carved from ice and fury. Nico, his gun still raised, his face completely expressionless, despite the violence radiating from every line of his body. Put her down. His voice was cold enough to freeze fire, each word sharp as a blade. Now, I won't ask twice. The uninjured man pulled a gun of his own, pointing it directly at Lily's head with a hand that wasn't quite steady. Back off, Santoro. She's coming with us. Lorenzo's orders. Nico didn't even flinch at the weapon aimed at her skull. He took a step forward, utterly unconcerned, his ice blue eye never leaving the man's face. You have 3 seconds to drop that gun before I put a bullet between your eyes. And trust me, I don't miss. The man's voice cracked with desperate bravado as he tried to hold his ground. Lorenzo wants her. 1. Nico's voice was flat, emotionless, counting down like a metronome. You're outnumbered, Santoro. There's 2 of us, and 2. The man's hand was shaking badly now, sweat beading on his forehead and dripping down his temples, despite the freezing December temperature. His partner was groaning on the ground, blood pooling beneath him on the frozen pavement. Tell your coward boss something for me. Nico's voice dropped even lower, each word dripping with menace and promise. Tell him if he wants my woman. Like a man, he comes for her personally. He doesn't send rats to do his hunting. Another step forward, gun still raised. Tell Lorenzo Valente that this is my neighborhood. She is mine, and the next man who puts his hands on her dies screaming. Do you understand me? The gun clattered to the ground as the man's nerve finally broke completely. Both men scrambled toward the van in blind panic, the injured one dragging himself across the frozen pavement and leaving a trail of blood behind. And within seconds, they were peeling away with tires screaming against the asphalt. Nico was beside her in an instant, dropping to his knees on the cold ground, his hands running over her body with clinical efficiency as he checked for injuries. Bambi, are you hurt? Did they touch you? Tell me where it hurts. No, I don't think so. Words wouldn't form properly, her whole body shaking so hard she could barely breathe. They grabbed me, but I don't think I'm hurt. His voice softened slightly, though his eyes were still chips of frozen sky as he cupped her face in his hands. Can you stand? Can you walk? She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out beneath her, trembling too badly to support her weight. And then he was lifting her into his arms like she weighed nothing at all. One arm under her knees, the other behind her back, pulling her tight against his chest. I told you, Bambi. His voice was quiet as he carried her toward a black SUV that had appeared at the curb, and there was something in his tone that might have been anger or fear or something else entirely. I told you what would happen if you ran. Why didn't you listen to me? I'm sorry. The words came out broken and pathetic, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted to go home. I just wanted my life back. You almost died. Something cracked in his voice, just for a moment before the ice reformed around his words. 30 seconds later, and you'd be in that van, and there's nothing I could have done to save you. Do you understand that? 30 seconds, Bambi. The world was going gray at the edges. Shock and adrenaline crash, combining into a wave of darkness that threatened to pull her under. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Nico's face above hers, his ice blue eyes burning with something that looked terrifyingly like fear. She woke to warmth and softness and the distant sound of raised voices filtering through fog. Could have gotten her killed. Nico's voice cut through like broken glass, and she heard something slam against a surface. I trusted you, Enzo. She had a knife to my throat. Enzo sounded wounded, stripped of his usual charm. What was I supposed to do? Tackle her? You were supposed to call me, Nico said, his voice dropping to something worse than shouting, cold, lethal. Not walk her to the goddamn gate. You said she wasn't a prisoner. You said a crash cut him off, something shattering against a wall. I said protect her. The words came out quiet now, deadly. Lorenzo's men had their hands on her. 30 seconds later, she'd be gone. Do you understand what he does to leverage? Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. I know, Enzo whispered, all bravado gone. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't undo what Lorenzo does to people. Footsteps paced back and forth, restless, furious. She doesn't leave this house without me. Not with you, not with Marco, just me. Understood. The word came out immediately, chastened footsteps coming closer, and the bedroom door opened with a soft creak. Lily quickly closed her eyes, evening out her breathing like she was still unconscious, her heart racing so fast she was certain he could hear it. She heard him move into the room, heard the soft click of the door closing behind him, felt the mattress dip as he sat on the edge of the bed beside her. His weight shifted the bed, pulling her slightly toward him. For a long moment, nothing happened, just silence and the warmth of his presence and the faint scent of his cologne mixed with something darker, something that smelled like gunpowder and winter cold. Then she felt his hand in her hair, and every nerve ending in her body came alive at once. His touch was impossibly gentle, his fingers threading through her tangled waves with a tenderness that seemed completely wrong from a man who had just shot someone in the street without flinching. He stroked her hair slowly, rhythmically, like he was soothing a frightened animal, and something in Lily's chest cracked open. Don't be scared, Bambi. His voice was barely a whisper, rough and low, meant only for her, even though he thought she couldn't hear. I won't let anything happen to you. Not the Valentis, not Lorenzo, not anyone in this world. His hand stilled in her hair, and when he spoke again, his voice was weighted with something that sounded like possession and prayer and desperation, all tangled together. You're mine now, Bambi. You get it? Mine to keep safe. Mine to keep safe. Mine too. He trailed off, his thumb brushing gently across her cheekbone. I'm not going to lose you. Not to Lorenzo. Not to anyone. Whatever it takes. Then the warmth of his hand disappeared, and she heard him stand, heard his footsteps cross slowly to the door, heard the soft click of the latch as he left her alone with those words burning in the darkness like embers. Lily's eyes flew open the moment the door closed, and she pushed herself up against the pillows with her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Those 3 words echoing through her mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. You're mine now. The words should have terrified her. They did terrify her because she was a modern woman with a law degree and strong opinions about possessive men who thought they could claim people like property. She should have been angry, should have been planning her next escape, should have been doing anything except lying here with warmth pooling in her chest. But the truth was messier than feminist theory and rational thought, because underneath the fear and the outrage, there was something else, something that had sparked to life when he'd appeared in that street like vengeance incarnate, something that had grown when he'd gathered her in his arms like she was precious, something that was even now spreading through her chest like honey. He had shot a man for her, threatened to kill for her, and some ancient primal part of her brain that hadn't gotten the memo about modern civilization found that unbearably, shamefully attractive. What the hell was wrong with her? She was trapped in a mafia mansion with a man who called her Bambi and considered her his personal property. And instead of planning her next escape, she was lying in his bed, wondering what his hands would feel like on other parts of her body. This was insane. She was insane. She needed to get a grip on herself before she did something monumentally stupid. But even as she thought it, she could still feel the ghost of his fingers in her hair, still hear that rough voice promising to protect her, still see those ice blue eyes burning with something that looked terrifyingly like devotion. You're mine now. The words kept circling through her mind like a prayer or a curse, or maybe both. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that some treacherous corner of her heart didn't want the memory of his touch to fade. She wanted more, wanted those hands on her skin again, wanted to know what it would feel like if he touched her when she was awake, when she could touch him back. Lily woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and for the first time since Christmas Eve, she didn't immediately start planning an escape. The bruises on her wrists had turned purple overnight. Every time she looked at them, she remembered being dragged into that van, the chloroform burning her nostrils, and then Nico's voice cutting through like a blade. You're mine now. She pushed the memory away and made her way downstairs, wearing the cashmere sweater Nico had sent because it was practical, not because she was accepting anything. The kitchen was warm and bright, Christmas lights still twinkling despite the holiday being 3 days past. Rosa stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, and Enzo sat at the counter, scrolling through his phone. Bambi descends from her tower, Enzo announced with a grin, and Rosa immediately abandoned her pancakes to usher Lily toward a chair. Toro, sit. You must eat. You're too thin. Rosa piled a plate high and set it in front of her before she could protest. She's feeding you because she likes you, Enzo said through a mouthful of bacon. When she doesn't like someone, she makes them eat her meatloaf. My meatloaf is delicious. It's a war crime, Bambi. Trust me. Lily found herself almost smiling, eating without meaning to. Enzo opened his mouth to say something else, but the words died when Nico walked in. She looked up and couldn't look away. The morning light caught the sharp angles of his face, the jaw shadowed with stubble, the broad shoulders stretching his black t-shirt. His dark hair was damp from a shower, and when those ice blue eyes found hers, something hot twisted in her stomach. She dropped her gaze to her pancakes, heat crawling up her neck. This is insane. He kidnapped me, and I'm noticing how attractive he is. Uncle Nico, Bambi was staring at you, Enzo said in a stage whisper that carried across the entire kitchen, and Lily wanted to melt into the floor. I was not staring, she protested, her voice coming out higher than intended. I was just looking in that direction. Sure you were? Enzo's grin was insufferable. That's why your face is the color of Rosa's tomato sauce. Enzo, leave the poor girl alone. Rosa scolded, but she was smiling too. Nico said nothing, just poured himself a cup of coffee with his back to the room. When he turned around, his expression was as unreadable as ever, those cold eyes giving nothing away. Eat your breakfast, Bambino, he said, his voice low and quiet, and then he was gone, disappearing through the doorway without another word. Enzo burst out laughing the moment his uncle left, and Lily stabbed her pancake with more force than necessary. She found the library by accident that afternoon, wandering through the mansion's endless hallways. The room was massive, 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves with leather armchairs arranged around a crackling fireplace. Lily pulled a book from the shelf and curled up in one of the armchairs, letting the familiar weight of pages soothe some of her anxiety. She'd been reading for maybe an hour when she heard footsteps, and she didn't have to look up to know who it was. What are you reading? Nico's voice came from somewhere to her left, and she kept her eyes fixed on the page. Why do you care? The response came out sharper than she intended, defensive and cold. But when she finally glanced up at him, his expression hadn't changed at all. He lowered himself into the armchair across from her, moving with that predatory grace she'd noticed the first night, and crossed one ankle over his knee like they were old friends having a casual conversation. You came down for breakfast today, he observed, and Lily couldn't tell if it was a question or a statement. I was hungry. You've been hungry for 3 days. Today, you decided to eat with us. Don't read too much into it. She kept her voice flat, dismissive, but something flickered in his eyes that told her he wasn't buying it. You're not a prisoner here, he said quietly, and she let out a laugh that sounded bitter even to her own ears. Really? As I am unable to depart, I'm without a phone. I don't have internet access. Nobody knows where I am or whether I'm still alive. She put the book down on her lap and looked him in the eyes, refusing to back down from those icy blue eyes. I think that sounds just like a prisoner. Nico studied her with such intensity that she felt like wriggling in her chair for a long time. She had never heard his voice before, but when he did speak, it was strangely different, lower and more solemn. When he said, 3 days, Lily's forehead furrowed in perplexity. What? 3 days? To negotiate, I'm meeting with the Valentis. I'll have a plan to get you out safely by the end of the week. In a single, smooth move, he rose from the chair and gazed down at her with what may have been respect. Bambino, This is not your war. You were just caught in the crossfire. Before she could find her voice again, he was almost to the door. Before she could stop it, the question slipped out. With his back to her and his hand on the doorframe, Nico hesitated and asked, "Why are you helping me?" She briefly believed he would not respond. Then he turned, and those icy blue eyes were burned by the firelight. He responded, "Because you're my responsibility," in a gruff, low voice. "From the moment you got into my car," she said, forcing herself to swallow. "That doesn't explain. From the moment I saw those eyes." He took a step toward her, then stopped, jaw tightening like he was fighting something. "You're mine, Bambi, whether you accept it or not." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "I don't belong to anyone." Something flickered across his face. Not anger, not amusement. Something darker, hungrier. Keep telling yourself that. And then he was gone, leaving Lily alone with the crackling fire and a heartbeat she couldn't control. She found herself outside his office 2 hours later, drawn by the sound of raised voices. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see Nico standing behind a massive desk, his jaw tight with frustration as he spoke rapidly into his phone in Italian. He hung up and threw the phone onto the desk, then picked up a document and stared at it like it had personally offended him. "Problem," Lily said from the doorway, and Nico's head snapped up. Despite her instincts, she walked inside the office and yelled at her to keep her distance, saying, "Eavesdropping? Hard not to when you're yelling in Italian." He threw the document onto the desk and said, "What's wrong? My lawyers are incompetent. My business partners are thieves, and this contract will bankrupt me if I sign it. Aside from that, everything is great. Let me see." She extended her hand, and for a brief while, she believed he would decline. Rather, he gave it to them. She pointed to a paragraph close to the bottom of the page and stated, "The force majeure clause is written incorrectly. It contradicts the liability section in Article 17. Any halfway competent lawyer could use that to void the entire agreement and sue you for damages." With the document forgotten in his fingers, Nico gazed at her as if she had suddenly begun speaking in tongues. "How are you aware of that? I received the top grade in my Columbia law class." The weight of years of being ignored and disregarded made the words sound worn out rather than proud. "However, because I'm a woman, young, and employed at a company that deals with small claims, court, and parking citations, no one pays attention to me." Nico's remark, "Your firm's loss," struck her more forcefully than any compliment she had ever heard. "My firm doesn't care. While the male colleagues handle the actual cases, I am assigned to fetch coffee and file papers." She didn't mean to imply that. Something about the way he was staring at her let the words flow out, even though he hadn't intended to reveal so much. "Then they're idiots." He held out the contract toward her and said, "Show me what else is wrong with this." Nico's expression changed as he watched her take the document. He no longer looked at her as a problem to be solved or as a civilian who had accidentally wandered into his war, but rather as something else entirely, something he hadn't expected to find. She spent the next hour showing him every flaw in the document, every potential weakness, and every clause that needed to be changed. "This indemnity clause is a disaster waiting to happen," she said, circling another paragraph. "And whoever drafted this didn't understand New York contract law at all." "I'm paying them $2,000 an hour," Nico said, his jaw tightening with irritation that wasn't directed at her. Then you're being robbed. She flipped to the next page. This termination clause alone could cost you millions if the other party decides to get creative. Nico listened without interrupting, asking questions only when he needed clarification, treating her expertise with a respect she'd never received from her own colleagues. By the time they finished, the sun had begun to set outside the window, painting the office in shades of gold and orange. "You're wasted at that firm," Nico said as she handed the marked-up contract back to him. "Tell me something I don't know. You could do better. You should do better." His eyes held hers, and something unspoken passed between them. "Anyone who can't see what you're worth doesn't deserve you." Lily didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing at all, just turned and walked out of the office with her heart beating faster than it should have been. Enzo found her in this garden as the last light faded, sitting on a stone bench with her arms wrapped around herself, still thinking about running. He dropped onto the bench beside her, and Lily let out a breath that fogged in the December air. "I don't know anymore. That's progress. Yesterday you had a knife." His grin was bright and easy, and Lily felt her lips twitch. "You're never going to let me forget that, are you?" "Absolutely not. Most exciting thing that's happened to me in months." He stretched his legs out. "Besides, it was kind of badass. Stupid, but badass. I wasn't actually going to stab you. I know your hands were shaking too much." He said it gently without mockery. "Why do you stay here?" she asked after a moment. "This life is dangerous. You could leave." Enzo's smile faded. "My parents died when I was 9. Car accident. Nothing glamorous. Nico took me in, raised me. He was 24 years old and suddenly responsible for a traumatized kid who wouldn't stop crying." Lily's heart clenched at the image. "This is my family," Enzo continued quietly. "The only one I've got. I die for these people. That's not something you walk away from." He turned to look at her, those brown eyes, seeing more than she was comfortable with. "You're alone too, aren't you? I can see it, the way you fight, like you've got nothing to lose." He nudged her shoulder gently. "Takes one to know one, Bambi." Lily didn't answer. They sat together in the gathering darkness, two orphans who understood loneliness in ways most people never would, and something that felt almost like friendship began to take root between them. Lily woke to unfamiliar silk sheets and the distant sound of someone humming in Italian downstairs. Rosa, probably already cooking breakfast for a family that wasn't hers. 5 days since she'd seen her apartment, her clothes, her life. 5 days trapped in a mansion that belonged to one of the most dangerous families in New York. She stared at the ornate ceiling above her bed, and the thought hit her like cold water. She was a hostage, a prisoner, and she should be terrified every second of every day. But that was the problem, wasn't it? She wasn't terrified, not anymore. Somewhere between Rose's cooking and Enzo's stupid jokes and Nico's intense stares, the fear had started to fade, replaced by something far more dangerous. They were warm, she realized, hating how true it felt. This psychotic Mafia family was actually warm. Rosa treated her like a daughter. Enzo treated her like a sister. And Nico. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying not to think about broad shoulders and ice blue eyes and a voice like gravel wrapped in velvet. She wasn't starting to like them. She definitely wasn't starting to like him. That would be insane. Stockholm Syndrome. trauma bonding, something clinical and diagnosable that she could blame on circumstances rather than feelings. But when she thought about going back to her empty Brooklyn apartment, eating microwave dinners alone, nobody noticing if she disappeared for days, the thought didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like loneliness. She told herself to stop, to get up, to go downstairs, and stop hiding in her room like a scared child. She needed to show them she wasn't just some helpless victim they needed to protect. She threw off the covers and padded toward the bathroom, already planning what she'd say at breakfast. Something confident, something that showed she wasn't afraid. She stripped off her pajamas, wrapped herself in a towel, and pushed open the bathroom door. Steam billowed out. The shower was running, and standing under the spray, completely naked, water cascading down muscles and tattoos, and Nico turned around slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Lily's brain short-circuited. Her eyes went exactly where they shouldn't have gone, down his chest, past the ridges of his abdomen, lower and lower, until her survival instincts finally kicked in, and she slapped her hands over her face. "What the hell?" The words came out as a shriek, her voice cracking in a way that would have been embarrassing if she wasn't already dying of mortification. "Good morning to you too, Bambino." His voice was calm, almost amused, and she could hear him turning off the water like this was perfectly normal, like women walked in on him naked every day. And maybe they did. What did she know about his life? "Why are you in my bathroom?" She pressed her palms harder against her eyes, as if that could erase what she'd already seen, which it couldn't, because the image was now burned permanently into her brain. "My shower is broken. My room is next door." This was the closest bathroom. He said it like he was explaining something simple to a child, his voice infuriatingly calm, and she wanted to scream. You can't just walk into a young woman's room like this. She kept her hands pressed to her eyes, heart hammering against her ribs, hard enough to bruise. There are rules, boundaries, basic human decency. This is my house. His voice was closer now, and she heard the rustle of a towel being pulled from the rack, the soft pad of wet feet on tile. "I go wherever I want." "That's not how it works." Her voice pitched higher with each word, borderline hysterical. "It's exactly how it works. My house, my rules." There was a pause, and she could almost hear him grinning. "Now you can open your eyes. I've got a towel. I don't trust you." She kept her hands firmly in place, fingers pressed so tight against her eyelids she was seeing stars. "Smart girl." There was approval in his voice, warm and rough. "But I do have a towel." Another pause, weighted and knowing. "Although your fingers are spread apart, so you already know that." Lily pressed her fingers tighter together, cheeks burning hot enough to fry an egg, and heard him step closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body, smell soap, and something masculine that made her head spin. "It's not a big deal," he said, and there was definitely amusement there now, curling through his voice like smoke. "Oh, it is a big deal." The words escaped before she could stop them, and mortification crashed through her like a tidal wave as she realized what she'd just admitted, while her eyes had been fixed directly on his. "I meant that's not... I was talking about the situation." "Bambi." He said it like a warning, like a threat, like a promise, all wrapped into one. And she heard him moving closer, felt the heat of him even through her closed eyes, her whole body vibrating with awareness. His finger hooked under her chin, tilting her face up, and she opened her eyes despite herself. He was inches away now, towel wrapped dangerously low around his hips, water dripping from his dark hair onto those impossibly broad shoulders, and his ice blue eyes were burning into hers with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. He said everything like he was about to hurt someone. She realized her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Even something like this, and somehow that made her knees weak instead of making her run. I saw where your eyes went. Twice, he said, his voice dropping to something rough and dark that made warmth spread through her like honey, his gaze never wavering from hers. And I heard what you said. I didn't mean, she started, her voice barely a whisper, but he cut her off. Don't lie to me. His grip on her chin tightened just slightly, not painful, but impossible to ignore, and his ice blue eyes pinned her in place like a butterfly on a board. I don't like liars. He was so intense, so terrifying in the way he said beautiful things, like he was threatening to kill someone. And God help her. She was starting to think she liked it. Don't look at me like that again, he said, releasing her chin and stepping back, his voice low and dangerous and full of dark promise, unless you want me to do something about it. He walked out without another word, leaving her standing in the steam with her heart racing and a heat coiling low in her belly that had absolutely nothing to do with embarrassment. Breakfast was torture. Lily sat at the kitchen table, trying to eat while Nico sat across from her, reading something on his phone. Every time she lifted her fork, she felt his gaze flick up to her face. Every time she looked down, she could feel him watching. Her cheeks burned. She couldn't swallow a single bite. Rosa chatted happily about dinner plans. Enzo made jokes Lily didn't hear. All she could focus on was the man across the table. The way his jaw tightened when he read something he didn't like. The way his fingers wrapped around his coffee cup. The way the morning light caught the sharp angles of his face. Then his phone rang, and he stood turning away to answer it. She couldn't stop staring at his profile. The strong nose, the full lips, the way his shoulders filled out that black shirt. Heat flooded through her entire body. Not embarrassment this time. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Oh God, she thought, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. Nico finished the conversation and turned back to see her watching. This man is beautiful, and he's making me feel things I shouldn't feel. One eyebrow went up a little. With her face flaming and her heart racing, Lily looked down at her plate. Enzo smiled across the table as if he had just seen a miracle. That afternoon, the boxes were on her bed. 3 silver ribbon, matte black boxes that likely cost more than her rent. It sat there like a challenge she hadn't requested, with no card or letter. The first featured cashmere sweaters made of fabric so fine it seemed like touching clouds, in rich burgundies and soft creams. The second included fitted slacks and silk shirts, the kind of clothing she had only ever seen in magazines or through the windows of places she could never afford. She stopped breathing after the third. Black lace that almost qualified as underwear was delicate, costly, and completely indecent. It seemed as though it belonged in a museum, spread out against tissue paper. Intricate designs that convey everything while concealing nothing. As she imagined wearing it, heat poured into her face, as she picked up one piece and held it up to the light. I pictured someone seeing her in it. I pictured his hands reaching to trace the patterns, his voice lowering to that harsh whisper, and his ice blue eyes darkening as he took in the lace on her skin. Before the notion could fully develop, she pushed it away, but the warmth that persisted in her stomach informed her exactly where her thoughts had gone and whose eyes she had been visualizing tracing over bare flesh and black lace. It was a quiet dinner that evening. Lily was alone with Nico at the enormous table, candlelight streaming across his sharp features, while Rosa had vanished into the kitchen to make dessert, and Enzo had excused himself to answer a phone call. His voice broke the silence just as she was beginning to unwind. "Have you received your presents?" With her lips pursed in contempt, she gazed up into those icy blue eyes, and something in his eyes told her just which gift he meant. "Do you mean the lace that's black? That's what you think a lady should get. Do you strive to impress ladies in this way?" she went on, elevating her chin with lingerie they hadn't requested. Nico raised his eyes to hers with a gaze that made her stomach turn, and his lips curved just slightly, barely at all. Heat filled her cheeks as she asked, "Do you want to be impressed?" "Maybe," he answered, lowering his voice. "I don't wear things like that, just so you know." The words struck her like electricity. "I'll get you used to wearing them for me." Her chair scraped the floor as she stood so quickly, her entire body shaking from an unidentified emotion. "What do you mean?" Her tone was abrasive and defensive. "You don't pique my attention. You're a criminal. I was abducted by you." Before he could answer, the chilly December air slammed her like a wall as she turned and walked out to the terrace. But even as she stood there, with the snow gently falling all around her, the picture of Nico's fingertips, stroking her flesh and slipping over black lace while she was wearing nothing else, kept coming to mind. She gripped the stone railing and commanded herself angrily, "Stop it. Get your act together, Lily. I won't let you consider this. It is impossible. Never." Even though the weather was chilly, her cheeks were burning, her heart was pounding, and she had to open her sweater's neck to breathe. "Oh God," she thought as she let out a chilly gasp. "I can't breathe," she said, unable to fall asleep. It was 1:47 a.m. on the clock. Lily had spent hours staring at the ceiling, reliving every moment. The dinner, the lace, the way he had gazed at her as if he could already picture removing those garments from her body. Water was what she needed. She had to put Nikiko Santoro out of her mind. With the exception of Christmas lights, which softly illuminated the space in shades of gold and red, the kitchen was black. When she noticed the shadow by the counter, she nearly turned around, but her mouth dried up when he moved into the light. With a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, Nico was bare-chested, covered in tattoos, and wearing nothing but gray sweatpants that hung low on his hips. Not able to sleep, he spoke in a coarser tone than normal. "No." Hyper-aware of her flimsy t-shirt, his exposed chest, and the darkness encircling them, she made her way to the refrigerator. I don't get much sleep. Nightmares." She took a drink of water, and when she lowered the bottle, he was closer. It was close enough to make her head spin with the scent of whiskey and woodsy stuff. He murmured, "You have water on your lip," and his thumb moved slowly, deliberately, and burningly over her bottom lip. "Bambi," he said in a hardly audible whisper. Her heart pounded against her chest, but she pushed steel into her voice and said, I want to kiss you. Anything's yours to have. You can't have it, though. There was a flash in his eyes, laughter, challenge. In one quick action, his hand moved to her waist and drew her close to him. She pressed against his exposed chest. Why am I unable to? The words were hazardous and low. Her cheeks were burning. Because I don't want you to kiss me, he said, leaning near her ear while staring down at her with dark, lustful eyes. Liar, he muttered, sending shivers down her spine, and she gulped hard. I've never even kissed anyone. Do you suppose I'll kiss you for the first time? He pulled back, genuine surprise crossing his features. His thumb came up to trace her lips, feather light. No one has touched these lips yet. Her breath came fast, shallow. She couldn't speak. He leaned in, his mouth brushing her ear. I'm going to kiss you so thoroughly that you'll dream about it for the rest of your life. He pulled back just enough to look at her, then lowered his lips toward hers. Close, so close, their breath mingling, his mouth a whisper away from hers. She couldn't move, couldn't think. Every cell in her body screamed for him to close the distance. Her mind fought her body, logic battling desire, but desire was winning. Then he stopped, but first he murmured against her lips, You have to give me permission. You have to ask me for it. Before she could respond, his hands gripped her waist and lifted her onto the kitchen counter in one effortless motion. He stepped between her thighs, hands braced on either side of her, his mouth hovering over hers. Torture disguised as restraint. Ask me, Bambi. The command was soft but absolute, his eyes burning into hers. She was trembling, burning, every nerve ending on fire. Please, she breathed, her voice breaking, her hands fisting in the fabric of nothing because he wasn't wearing a shirt. Kiss me. He smiled slow, devastating, and pulled back, leaving her gasping on the counter. Wait. Confusion and disappointment flooded her voice, her body leaning toward him involuntarily. Why? With his thumb caressing her cheek, he added softly, Your first kiss shouldn't be in a kitchen at 2:00 a.m. It should be somewhere special, somewhere you'll remember forever. Why are you concerned? The question was asked in its most unvarnished form. Because you'll remember it for the rest of your life when I kiss you, he continued, his intense gaze captivating her. Bambino, I never do anything half-heartedly. I also don't share. You are wholly mine when you are mine. Her body swayed toward him, her hands clutching the counterage to prevent her from reaching for him as he stepped aside, and she felt the loss like a wound. Good night, Bambi, he said softly, something tender flickering beneath the ice in his eyes. Good night, she whispered to his retreating back, heart pounding, skin burning, aching for something she'd never known she needed. She sat on that counter for a long time after he left, Christmas lights painting her skin red and gold, wondering how a man who said everything like a threat could make her feel so terrifyingly safe. Lily couldn't stop her thinking about the kitchen. She lay in bed as morning light crept through the curtains, replaying every moment. His thumb on her lip, his voice saying he wanted to kiss her, his promise to wait, to make it special. No one had ever wanted to give her something special before. In 24 years of existence, she'd been the girl people forgot, the orphan no one adopted, the student no one mentored, the woman no one noticed. But Nikiko Santoro looked at her like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. 6 days ago, she'd been a nobody with student debt in a studio apartment. Now she was lying in silk sheets in a mafia mansion, thinking about a man who killed people for a living and kissed like he meant it. Her life had become insane, and the most insane part, she didn't want to leave. She was still floating, somewhere between disbelief and anticipation, when she came downstairs for breakfast. And then the front door opened. The woman who walked in was tall, slim, with black hair cascading down her back like ink. Green eyes swept the room with predatory precision, cataloging threats and dismissing weaknesses in a single glance. A red dress clung to her curves like a second skin, the kind of dress designed to make other women feel invisible. She was beautiful, the way a poisonous snake was beautiful, mesmerizing and deadly, fangs hidden behind perfect red lips. Nicolo. Her voice was honey and venom mixed together. We need to talk now. Nico stood from the table and Lily watched the transformation, warmth draining from his face, walls slamming up, his expression shuddering into cold stone. The man who touched her so gently last night disappeared, replaced by someone harder and more dangerous. Bianca, I wasn't expecting you. So, this was Bianca Valente, the woman Nico was supposed to marry, the daughter of the man who murdered his father. She moved through the room like she owned it, heels clicking against marble with each deliberate step. Clearly, Bianca's eyes swept to Lily, and something flickered there. Curiosity, contempt, or both. And apparently, you've been busy. There's a rumor going around Nicolo. Nikiko Santoro has a woman. His men talk. Word travels fast. She circled Lily slowly, assessing her the way a buyer might assess livestock at auction. This is her, this plain, forgettable little thing. A cold laugh escaped those red lips. She looks like she should be filing paperwork in some sad government office, not playing house with a mafia boss. The words landed like slaps, and Lily felt herself shrinking under that venomous gaze. All her newfound confidence evaporated, leaving the old insecurities exposed and raw. Bianca. Nico's voice carried a warning, sharp enough to cut glass. 2 months, Nicolo. Her composure cracked, revealing something almost like desperation beneath the ice. My father has waited 2 months for you to set a wedding date. His patience is gone. The room went completely still. Even the air seemed to stop moving. She told him the rest in clipped, urgent tones. The attack on Christmas Eve was just a warning shot. The next one wouldn't miss. He had 1 week, 7 days to take action on this wedding. Otherwise, her father would destroy everyone he loved. Rosa, Enzo, his men, and his little pet lawyer too. Is she worth it? Bianca's eyes landed on Lily with something that might have been pity. This ordinary girl with nothing to offer? Is she worth your mother's life? Enzo appeared in the doorway, his usual grin replaced by cold steel. That's enough, Bianca. Stay out of this, puppy. But there was no real heat in her voice. Beneath all that polish and venom, she looked tired, scared even. Enough. I heard you. Nico said in a tone as definitive as a door closing. Now go. Bianca moved to the doorway, then stopped, her hand resting on the doorframe. 1 week, Nicolo. I could only buy you that. To be fair, I also don't want to get married to you, but I'd rather be your wife than watch my father burn the city down. The door closed behind her. Silence filled the room like floodwater. Bianca found her in the hallway 10 minutes later. She fell into step beside Lily, caught her arm, not bruising, just firm enough to stop her. I wasn't finished. She leaned against the wall, some of that perfect composure slipping away. She didn't want Nico. She admitted never had. But her father wanted this alliance, and what her father wanted, he took. The alternative was a bloodbath. Lorenzo killing everyone Nico loved, Nico retaliating. A cycle of violence that would never end. You're not his type, you know. Bianca's gaze swept over Lily, clinical and dismissive. He goes for women like me, polished, powerful, cold. You're soft, warm. You don't belong in this world. Maybe that's exactly why. Or maybe you're just a distraction. Bianca pushed off the wall, smoothing her dress. A warm body, while he figures out how to destroy my family without marrying into it. She started to walk away, heels clicking against marble. 1 week, little lawyer. After that, either there's a wedding or there's a war, and soft girls don't survive wars. She disappeared around the corner, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts and a cold knot of fear growing in her stomach. The library was dark, except for the fire crackling in the hearth. Everyone else had gone to bed, and now it was just the two of them, sitting on the floor in front of the flames. Why don't you just marry Biana? The question came out before she could stop it, and she felt him go still beside her. All your problems would be solved. No war, no bloodshed, and she's beautiful. She swallowed hard, forcing out the last part. If you marry her, the threat against me disappears too. Nico rose slowly, crossing the space between them with that predatory grace. He stopped in front of her, tilting her chin up with one finger, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. You want me to marry her? His voice was soft, dangerous. It's the logical choice, isn't it? She looked up at him with wide eyes, trying to sound reasonable, even as her heart raced. He smiled. The sight hit her like a physical blow. This man who rarely smiled, whose face was carved from ice and stone. When he smiled, he became the most devastating man she'd ever seen. I don't like Bianca, he said simply, his thumb still stroking her cheek. The woman I want is you. Despite her best efforts, her voice was breathless as she said, You still don't know me. You didn't even know me 6 days ago. Not important. His gaze pierced hers. You've been in my life for 6 days. I also desire you. She pulled away from his contact, her fury rising, saying, You're like a child who wants a toy. You probably don't even understand what love is. I'm not your plaything either. He stepped closer and lowered his lips to hers, whispering, Yes, you are. You take pleasure in every moment of it. Her mouth felt the heat of his breath. In addition, you will become my wife. I informed you. I own you. And you'll be under me in 3 days, dressed only in that black lace. Before she even realized she had moved, her palm made contact with his face. The sound of the crack reverberated throughout the quiet space. She felt a wave of instant regret. His kiss crashed upon hers with a passion that took her breath away. And even though she hadn't meant to, he was already drawing her against him, not asking, not taking, not being nice. And she was kissing him back, her body arching into his, her fingers fisting in his shirt. God help her. Her head was spinning, her lips were swollen, and they both gasped for oxygen as they broke apart. Still pushed against his chest, she said, "I thought my first kiss was supposed to be unforgettable." With his forehead against hers, he let out a gruff giggle after that slap. "Trust me," it said. His thumb brushed her swollen lip as his hand reached up to cup her face. She moved away from him and said, "And when you look at me with those big eyes, when you're this close to me, how long do you think I can resist?" Her heart continued to race. "You're mistaken if you believe that I won't adore you." There was a dense, electrified silence between them. His expression changed in some way, perhaps shock, respect, or something more profound that she was unable to pinpoint. His inner predator backed down just enough to make place for anything nearly human. He tasted the word again. Love. "Do you want that, Bambi? I refuse to take anything less than what I deserve. You shouldn't elevate your chin the way she did." After staring at her for a while, his menacing smile gradually grew softer until it caused her chest to hurt. The fire outside crackled, and I thought, "You really are different." Snow fell silently and softly. He took a step back and faced the door, pausing at the threshold. "What, Bambi? With you, I'll learn to love." Then he was gone, leaving her with scorching lips, a racing heart, and the horrifying awareness that she wanted him to know. Her eyes jolted wide, the dream still searing in her mind. Her legs were wide apart by Nico's strong, possessive hands moving up her thighs. With his fingers digging into the waistband of her underwear, Nico's mouth was heated against her neck, his teeth touching her pulse point. As Nico's fingers crept between her thighs and discovered her wet, yearning, and frantic, he spoke in her ear in a deep, authoritative voice, telling her that she was his, only his, and always his. She was gasping his name, straining into his touch, pleading for something she had never had, but now desperately needed more than air. As the weight of him crushing her into silk sheets and his body covering hers like a brand. When she realized where her hand had wandered during the night, she sprang awake, her heart hammering against her ribs and heat rising to her cheeks. She was hurting, throbbing, and slippery with want for a guy who had abducted her, threatened her, and kissed her as if he intended to eat her whole. The pricey sheets were tangled around her legs, moist with sweat. She moaned as she buried her scorching face in the pillow. She had been a virgin 7 days prior and had never experienced a decent kiss. She was now experiencing dreams that would make a romance novelist blush, waking up in the guest chamber of a Mafia boss, flushed and frantic. She noticed the message on her nightstand, a folded piece of paper hidden under a hot cup of coffee that wasn't there when she went to sleep. Sharp, manly penmanship. "You were correct. Nico, I'm learning." While she slept, he had been in her room, while she dreamed of him abusing her body in ways that were unimaginable. Had she made noises, stroked herself, and groaned his name as he watched? She wanted to die by crawling under the blankets. When she got there, the office was in disarray, with papers all over the place, file boxes piled up against the walls, and anxiety that might suffocate her. With his icy blue eyes following her across the room, Nico sat behind his desk. He pointed to the pile of papers and remarked, "The Valente files. Everything that we possess. Look for something." She got to work by rolling up her sleeves. The hours merged into one. Shell company after shell company, contract after contract. Even though her neck hurt and her eyes burned, she continued to look. Then she discovered it. Nico. Her voice was powerful and piercing. "Now come here." In a matter of seconds, he was behind her, close enough for her to feel his heat. "What did you discover?" "Notary Public Arthur Bennington." She gestured toward the signature. "Every shell company, registration, and document attesting to Valence's rightful corporate ownership was notarized by him. Arthur Bennington passed away in November 2019 with a wrinkled brow. His signature continues to show on documents 4 years after his passing, but she saw his eyes enlarge. Legal documents notarized by a deceased man. Absolute, total silence. What does that signify? His voice was menacing and low. Her eyes were flashing with fire as she turned to face him. This indicates that none of the Valentes' commercial fronts, offshore accounts, or shell companies are legitimate under the law. After just one phone call to the DA, all of Valente's assets are frozen in a matter of days. No lawyers, no trial. She bent over. Everything that Lorenzo constructed, absent. Enzo leaped from his seat. "Bambi, holy." Marco gave a sound that sounded nearly like laughter. For the first time, respect flickered in those icy eyes. Enzo caught Rosa's shoulders as she emerged in the doorway. No, Bambi merely used papers to ruin the Valente. Lily, however, was not observing them. She had Nico in her sights. His expression burned with pride and hunger as he stood motionless. Electricity shot through her as his large, warm hand landed on her shoulder. "Your lawyers looked for years," she continued, maintaining eye contact. "In 4 hours, I located it." His hold became very firm. "Since you differ from them." "No," she raised her chin. "I committed every precedent and loophole to memory. I was young, a woman, and poor, so nobody paid attention." Her tone became stern. "But I was this good all the time. I'm now paying attention." "Excellent." She grinned triumphantly and sharply. "Because I am going to provide you with the head of Lorenzo Valente on a legal platter." That afternoon, she discovered Enzo smoking in this garden while gazing at the snow with a look on his normally happy face that she had never seen before. He gave the bench next to him a pat. "My favorite lawyer who destroys the Mafia is Bambi. Sit down." Pulling her coat tighter, she took a seat beside him. "This place is going to freeze you." "Worth it." He exhaled smoke into the bleak sky and added, "Needed to process." "Nico has been plotting retaliation for 14 years. One morning, you discovered the solution. I was fortunate." For once, he looked at her with seriousness. Knife, first day. Wall on day 2. The door slammed in Rosa's face on the 3rd day. "You are now using a deceased notary to overthrow a mafia empire." A grin appeared on his face. "That is not fortuitous. Evolution is that." She felt her chest tighten as his countenance changed. "You evolved." However, Nico also did. Yesterday, he grinned, genuinely grinned. He extinguished his cigarette. I've been alive for 24 years, observing my uncle. I have never once seen him grin. Right up until you, Enzo. He squeezed her hand and murmured, "You're making him human again. Don't break him, please. He wouldn't make it, in my opinion." Her heart ached as the remainder of the day went by in pieces. When Nico handed her lunch, his fingertips briefly touched her arm before he withdrew. His eyes were ravenous, and his jaw was taut with self-control. He didn't push, though. She noticed him observing her from the other side of the room in the afternoon. He averted his gaze initially as they locked eyes. "Allow her to breathe." He pulled out her chair at supper, and Rosa smiled as Enzo joked that Uncle Nico was finally picking up manners. Nico gave her a modest, intimate smile in place of his customary frown. This is nearly worse, she reflected. The self-control and patience, similar to a predator who has mastered the art of waiting for authorization before attacking. When everyone else had gone to bed, he discovered her on the balcony. She knew he was there before he said a word, for the snow was falling silently and softly. He experienced a shift in pressure, as if gravity had rearranged itself about him. He said in a gruff, low voice behind her, "You'll freeze. I enjoy being cold. It facilitates my thought process." He drew nearer until she could feel his warmth against her back. He hesitated before raising his hand and hovering close to her shoulder. The question struck her like a blow to the chest. "Can I touch you?" This possessive, violent man is requesting permission. She looked over at him. His jaw tensed as he asked, "What happened to 'I take what I want'?" The words sounded gruff, even painful. "You happened. You said you want love. I don't know how to give that. I don't know how to be gentle. But I'm trying, Bambi. For you, I'm trying." Something cracked open inside her chest. "Yes." The word came out as a whisper. "You can touch me." His hand found her face, cupping her cheek with a gentleness that made tears prick her eyes. "I'm going to kiss you now." She didn't refuse. His lips met hers. No teeth, no dominance, just warmth and want. She fisted her hands in his shirt and pulled him closer, and the kiss deepened, a sound escaping his throat that was half groan and half growl. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, both breathing hard, he asked if that was better. His voice wrecked. She laughed, breathless. "Good, different. But I kind of miss the other version too." His eyes went dark. "Don't tempt me. Maybe I want to tempt you." His grip tightened on her waist, fingers digging in just enough to make her gasp. "You're playing with fire. You said I have fire in me." She smiled up at him. "Maybe I want to see what happens when we burn together." He made a sound like a sen kissed her again. Harder, deeper, possession bleeding through. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and she melted into him. Then he pulled back, breathing hard. "We need to move tonight. The evidence won't wait. If Lorenzo finds out what we have, he'll destroy everything." The drive to the DA's office was silent. Lily sat with the folder of documents in her lap, enough to bring down an empire, enough to put Lorenzo Valente in prison for the rest of his life. She stared out the window at the city lights blurring past, her mind racing through everything that had happened in the past week, enough to put Nico there, too, if she wanted. The black SUV pulled up in front of the building, its engine humming in the cold night air. Street lights cast harsh shadows across his face as he turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I trust you." His voice was low and rough, stripped of its usual command. "I know you could turn me in too. Everything you have on the Valentes, you have on me. The kidnapping, the threats, the week you spent as my prisoner." His jaw tightened. One word to the DA and I'm in handcuffs. By morning, she didn't look at him, kept her eyes fixed on the folder on the documents that held so much power. When she spoke, her voice was flat and hard. "You kidnapped me." Each word landed like a stone. "I haven't been home in a week. You held me against my will. I couldn't call anyone, couldn't leave." Her jaw tightened with old anger. "I could tell them you're working with the Valentes, that both families are in this together, that you're just as guilty as Lorenzo." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. She could feel him watching her, feel the weight of his gaze on the side of her face. "Look at me, Bambi." She didn't move. Lily, not Bambi, her real name, spoken soft and raw. Something in the way he said it made her turn despite herself. Those ice blue eyes were open in a way she'd never seen. Vulnerable, exposed. No walls, no masks, no predator lurking beneath the surface. Just a man who was putting everything he had in her hands. "I'm yours." His voice was barely above a whisper, rough with something that might have been fear. "That's how much I trust you." She held his gaze for a long moment, something cracking in her chest that she couldn't name. Then she opened the car door and stepped out into the cold without a word. The hour inside felt like a lifetime. She handed over the documents, answered questions, watched the DA's expression shift from skepticism to disbelief to barely contained excitement as he realized what she was giving him. A case that would make his career an empire built on forgery. A man who thought himself untouchable, about to learn how wrong he was. She told them everything about the Valentes. She told them nothing about Nico. When she walked back into the winter night, snowflakes catching in her hair, the black SUV was still there, still waiting. He could have left, should have left, probably, given what she might have done inside. But he'd stayed. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. The heater hummed. Snow fell silent outside the windows. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You could have run." His voice was rough, raw, like the words cost him something. "You could have disappeared into the city, called the police, never looked back." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You were free the moment you walked through those doors." She met his eyes, those ice blue eyes that had terrified her a week ago, that had haunted her dreams, that looked at her now with something raw and wondering and impossibly soft. "I want to spend New Year's Eve with you." Her voice was quiet but certain, and she watched something shift in his expression. Shock, hope, the beginning of something that looked terrifyingly like love. "With you, with Enzo and Rosa, with a warm family." She reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his, feeling the calluses and the strength and the warmth of him. "Take me home." The mansion had transformed overnight. Fairy lights everywhere, candles on every surface, the smell of roses cooking wrapping around Lily like the warmest hug she'd ever known. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, hand pressed to her chest, and just breathed it in. 7 days ago, this place had been her prison. Now it sparkled with warmth and something that felt terrifyingly like home. Rosa found her standing there with tears in her eyes and immediately cupped her face. "Bella, you look like an angel," she cried, pulling Lily into the kitchen where Enzo was stealing mozzarella. "Bambi, you clean up nice for someone who tried to stab me last week," he grinned, popping cheese into his mouth, and Rosa swung her wooden spoon at his head while he ducked with a laugh that filled the whole room. "Every family has these things," Rosa shrugged, waving her spoon dismissively. "Knives, arguments, someone gets stabbed. Normal. This is a Mafia family," Lily thought, warmth blooming in her chest. And somehow, I'm part of it now. The gifts came after dinner. They gathered in the living room, fire crackling, champagne glasses glinting. Lily hadn't expected anything. A week ago, she'd been a prisoner here. Rosa pressed a package into her hands with trembling fingers. Inside, a hand-knitted cashmere sweater and a worn leather cookbook filled with faded Italian handwriting. "Family recipes," Rosa whispered, tears spilling down her weathered cheeks as she turned the pages. "My mother's, her mother's, now yours. Toro." Lily's throat closed completely. No one had ever given her something like this, something that whispered, "You belong here now." Enzo dropped a poorly wrapped package in her lap. "Open it. Get it open," he urged, bouncing like a child. And inside, she found a black t-shirt reading, "I survived the Santoro family with a cartoon knife and a wide-eyed deer." She burst out laughing so hard her stomach hurt. Marco stepped forward with a leather notebook, her initials embossed in gold. He didn't speak, just nodded once when she looked up with questions in her eyes. Respect. After everything, he was giving her respect. She looked around at all of them, and guilt twisted sharp in her stomach. "I didn't get any of you anything," she said in a small voice, heat flooding her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. Actually, I was kidnapped and brought here a week ago," she said, suppressing smiles as tears of amusement welled up in her eyes. "It would have been strange if I had stopped at a gift shop." The room blew up. Rose laughed happily and loudly, howling as Enzo. Marco's shoulders were trembling as well, and Nico was grinning, smiling so softly that it made her heart skip a beat. The room fell suddenly and breathlessly silent as Rosa said, "One more gift," her eyes glimmering with knowledge as she gazed at her son. Nico got up. Before Lily realized why, her heart began to race as he approached her cautiously and with a new, almost anxious posture. He came to a halt in front of her, met her eyes, and dropped to one knee. Her palm shot to her mouth as her breath hitched. With a diamond gleaming like a fallen star in the firelight, he took out a velvet box and opened it. "I saw those big eyes in my rearview mirror," he began, his voice rough and stripped of command, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, and I knew I was in trouble. This girl who got in the wrong car, talked too much, kicked me, pulled a knife on my cousin, tried to climb my wall. Lily laughed through the tears already streaming down her face, her whole body trembling. "I never trusted anyone, Bambi, but you changed everything." He held up the ring, his hand shaking. "This man who faced bullets without flinching, trembling because of her," he said. "Never let anyone in." he continued, his expression changing to something raw and painful, jaw tightening with old wounds. Caring about people gets them killed, transformed me. I'm not a gentleman. I'm not sentimental. I don't know beautiful words, he said, his voice cracking, and Lily felt her heart shatter and rebuild in the same breath. But I promise you, every day I will protect you. Every day I will show you that you matter. Every day I will learn to love you better. He looked up at her with those ice blue eyes completely open, completely vulnerable. Lily Whitmore, will you marry me? The last words came out barely above a whisper, and she watched his hand tremble as he held up the ring. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who had kidnapped her, threatened her, kissed her like she was oxygen, and somehow become her home. A week ago, I got into the wrong car, thinking it was my Uber, she whispered, her voice breaking as tears fell freely. 10 seconds before that, I was standing on a frozen sidewalk, feeling sorry for myself because I was so alone. She reached down to cradle his cheeks, thumbs brushing his cheekbones. When I got into your car, I thought my life was over. A sob escaped her throat, but she was smiling through her tears. But life is strange, Nico. So strange. I never imagined that the wrong car would give me a family, would give me love, would give me you. Her whole body trembled as she looked into those ice blue eyes. Yes, God. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring on, perfect fit. And then he was on his feet, lifting her, spinning her, his mouth finding hers, while Rosa sobbed, and Enzo whooped, and Marco actually clapped. Bambi Santoro, he murmured against her lips when they finally broke apart, his voice reverent and possessive all at once. I like the sound of that. She went to her room at midnight, still floating on champagne and happiness. The door opened behind her. Nico filled the doorway, eyes dark with hunger, and he crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her against him without a word, kissing her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. My future wife, he growled against her lips, and heat flooded her entire body as her knees nearly buckled. She kissed him back desperately, fingers fisting his shirt, body arching into his. A week of dreams that left her aching, all crashing over her now like a wave. He lifted her effortlessly and carried her to the bed, laying her on silk sheets with a gentleness that contradicted his burning eyes. His body covered hers, and she could feel every hard line of him. Nico, she pulled back, breathless, heart pounding against her ribs. We don't know each other that well. We will, he promised against her neck, kissing her jaw, the spot behind her ear that made her gasp. Every day, for the rest of our lives. I'm never quitting my job, she managed, as his hands slid under her shirt, the words fracturing. I'm a lawyer. I'll build you an office, he murmured, fingers tracing her ribs. Best in Manhattan, your name in gold. My friends stay in my life, she gasped as his thumb brushed her breast. You can't forbid. He kissed her so deeply that she couldn't remember her own name. His eyes were burning when he withdrew. No more talking, Bambi, he said in a smoke and gravel voice. Focus on my hands, my mouth, what I'm about to do to you. No, she shuddered, her voice revealing fragility. I've never done this before. He held her face with unbelievable gentleness as something tender overcame the hunger. He muttered, give yourself to me, his lips grazing hers in a prayerful manner. He undressed her slowly and tenderly, his mouth following his hands, shoulders, stomach, and hips, until he reached her underwear and paused. Let me show you what love feels like. Lace in black. He gazed up at her with those blazing eyes, and a gradual smile came across his face. He whispered, I told you 3 days ago this moment would come. As his fingertips traced the lace's edge on her hip, her cheeks turned scarlet as she said, You wore it for me. I didn't. It was the only clean. Liar, he whispered, pressing a kiss to her stomach, and she stopped trying to explain because his mouth was moving lower, and she couldn't think anymore. He undressed her completely, reverently, his mouth following his hands, hips, thighs, until she was trembling with need. Are you sure? He asked, his voice strained with restraint, and she pulled him down and kissed him, whispering against his mouth that she'd never been more sure of anything. The first moment was sharp. He held still, kissing away her tears, whispering, Beautiful, perfect mine. When she nodded, he moved, and pleasure built in waves until she was gasping his name, nails raking his back. Lee, you're mine. He groaned against her neck, and when they shattered together, something shifted inside her, like coming home after 24 years of being lost. She woke to sunlight, and his body curved around hers, his arm across her waist, the ring on her finger, the delicious ache everywhere. This is real, she thought. This is my life now. They went downstairs, hand in hand. Rosa took one look at them, Lily's flushed cheeks, Nico's soft expression, and burst into tears. First breakfast of New Year. Special. The TV murmured until a name made Lily freeze. Lorenzo Valente arrested federal agents' anonymous tip. It worked. She breathed, turning to Nico with fierce triumph blazing in her eyes, her whole body electric with victory. It actually worked. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead, telling her that she had done this. She had brought them down. Enzo stumbled in, hair a disaster. After 14 years, he said, collapsing into a chair with disbelief written across his face. It's over. Rosa crossed herself, crying. This wasn't just business. This was a wound finally healing. Breakfast was the happiest meal Lily had ever known. Enzo came back from the front door with a strange grin. 5 families outside. Rosses, Mancinis, Moretts, Lombardis, De Lucas, he announced, pausing for effect. They want Lily as their lawyer. Nico's expression went cold. He stood pulling Lily against him. Tell them my wife is not a mafia lawyer, he said, steel in every word. Lily arched her eyebrows at him and said, She's my lawyer, only mine. He let out a sigh. And her other clients, non-mafia, regular people, he said, his mouth clenched. She's not getting involved in this world. You won't allow it, she said, her eyes glimmering with challenge. He cupped her face and muttered, I'm protecting you, his face softening. Even though I know you can defend yourself, please allow me. Beneath, she could see the fear of losing her to the dark. Okay, she said in a whisper. Rosa began to cry once again as he gave her a tender kiss and said, No mafia clients, just you. Later, Lily watched the snow fall from the window. Nico encircled her from behind with his arms. She turned to face him, scared and alone. "What are you thinking, Bambi?" "That a week ago I got in the wrong car," she said. He asked in a gentle voice whether she had any regrets. "Now I have everything." She shook her head and grinned up at the crystal blue eyes that no longer scared her. "Not one," he said, kissing the corner of her mouth, her nose, and her forehead. "I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please leave a remark with your city or country. Thank you for listening to the very end. Welcome home, Lily."